So, No Man's Sky is a hugely big game with plenty to do, which also means there is a hell of a lot to learn within the game. Now, there is a great tutorial story mission which is going to give you an overview of the absolute basics and a lot of aspects within it. But what it doesn't tell you about are some of the huge mistakes you can make on your own once you venture out. So I've created this video to show you to avoid making them. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get stuck in. And I will actually start off by talking about the story. If you're new to the game, it would be a big mistake to not follow the original storyline because, as I said, it's going to give you a great start to the game and it will teach you the basics about a lot of the game. Some of the most important features, so resource gathering, base building, interstellar travel, freighters and more. This story questline was designed to give you a basic overview of the entire game before letting you venture out by yourself. Now of course there is so much more to learn, but it is a great start, so make sure you complete the story if you're brand new to the game. So let's talk about your inventory, and the mistake you would make is not increasing your inventory size in your exosuit and your starship. Now with your starship it would probably be best to wait until you get a half decent starship rather than the starter ship, but when you do have a good ship and some money, you want to be expanding your inventory to not only store resources but more importantly, install Starship technology upgrades to give you better shields, weapons, and most importantly, the ability to travel further in a single warp. Your exosuit is a little different, but the same applies. You can install 2 expansion slots onto your exosuit per regular star system. So you can do this once on a regular space station and once on the space anomaly. It is going to cost you money and will cost more the bigger your inventory is, but it is absolutely essential for you to do it. You'll obviously be able to carry more resources, and more importantly, your life support systems, shields and jetpacks will be significantly improved with technology you can install there. So make sure you add the 2 new expansion slots per new system that you visit. Right, let's talk about freighters. Now, these are some of the most expensive items you can buy in the game, but did you know your first freighter will always be free? But that's not the tip here. The mistake you're making is always taking the first freighter you're offered for free. Now more often than not, it's going to be a basic freighter, so maybe a C or a B class one, A if you're super lucky, and if you're insanely lucky, an S class. Now I think personally I would take an S class freighter if it were free, but it is so incredibly unlikely. And if you do take a basic free freighter, you will then have to buy another better freighter when you come across it, which is going to cost you millions of units. But did you know that you will get another opportunity to get a free freighter at a later time if you don't take the first one? Well, you do now. So unless your first freighter is S-Class, which I highly doubt, don't take the first one you come across for free and instead take a payment and wait for another opportunity to get yourself a better one. Now, on to upgrades, and more specifically your Starship upgrades, and even more specifically your hyperdrive upgrades. So one mistake you're going to make is not upgrading your hyperdrive, because you can only travel to yellow star systems starting out, so you'll be missing out on a whole load of valuable resources as a start. There are 3 hyperdrive upgrades allowing you to travel to all coloured star systems. You've got the cadmium drive, you've got the emerald drive, and the indium drive. Now if I'm not mistaken, if you have the indium drive installed, you can then travel to all star systems. But I still have all 3 installed anyway because, you know, reasons. You can get the blueprints for all 3 of these on board the Space Anomaly, but you will need to travel to red systems to install the Emerald Drive, and you'll need to have traveled to green systems to install the Indium Drive, as they require cadmium and emerald respectively, which can only be found in those colour star systems. And sticking with hyperdrive upgrades, you'll be making another big mistake if you don't install S-Class hyperdrive upgrade modules, which will vastly increase the distance you can travel in a single warp. So for example, when you've got your starter ship, you'll probably only be able to warp about, I don't know, 100 or so light years per jump. But with an upgraded hyperdrive, you'll be able to jump well over 1000 light years per jump, and you'll also use less warp fuel doing that. So make sure you install those upgrades. The next mistake you could be making is not stocking up on basic yet essential resources. So I'm talking about things like oxygen for life support, sodium for hazard protection, and tritium to use your pulse engine in your starship. You want to make sure you have a stack of each of these resources at all times, because they're some of the most basic resources to keep you alive and moving around. There are a few other resources which are useful to have a stack of at all times as well, such as carbon, which can be used for refining and recharging your mining laser, and then perhaps silicate powder as well, which is going to charge you up terrain manipulator, and then finally dihydrogen, as it's used a lot in early game crafting. Now there are some other basic resources I keep around at all times as well, but the ones I've mentioned are absolutely essential. Now, in No Man's Sky, money is relatively easy to come by, and I'll get onto that in just a minute, but nanites on the other hand are a little harder to come by, yet they are still widely used, especially when it comes to base building and unlocking blueprints. But the mistake you could be making is not uploading all of your discoveries when you're scanning anything on every planet you actually visit. So, scan all the flora, fauna and minerals, and then head over to the Discoveries tab and upload them all for a bunch of nanite rewards. And if you manage to scan all of the creatures on the planet, you'll get a nanite bonus which could be worth upwards of 3,000 nanites, depending on how many creatures are on that planet. And there is even an upload all button, so it's only going to take you a matter of seconds to get hundreds, if not thousands of nanites, so don't make the mistake of not uploading those discoveries. And sticking with scanning things, the next mistake you could be making is not upgrading your scanner with S-Class upgrade components. The reason being, when you first start out in the game, scanning flora and fauna isn't particularly lucrative at all. Like, each creature scanner is going to get you a measly about 3,000 units, which is peanuts in a game like this. But if you add a few S-Class scanner upgrades onto your multi-tool and place them side by side, that number is significantly increased. You'll go from that pathetic 3,000 units per creature scan to upwards of 300 to 400,000 units per scan instead, depending on the rarity of the creature. So basically you'll be making millions of units per planet just by scanning plants and creatures. And if you haven't done so already, stop what you're doing in the game, go up to the nearest space station and for goodness sake buy some S-Class scanner upgrades for your multi-tool using the nanites you earned in the previous step. Now let's talk about getting around on foot. Now obviously No Man's Sky is a ridiculously huge game, so you want to make sure that you're using the quickest ways of getting from point A to point B, even when you're on foot. And when you are on foot, you should definitely be using the melee jump, because it is far quicker than sprinting across the ground. So, how to do a melee jump, you may ask? Well, it's pretty simple. All you need to do is simply tap the melee button, which is Q on PC and R1 on RB and PlayStation Xbox respectively, then immediately tap the jetpack button, which is space on PC and X on PlayStation, X on PlayStation, A on Xbox. And if you've done this correctly, you'll be flying across the ground far quicker, especially when you've upgraded your jetpack. Now let's take a tangent back to resource gathering, and of course this plays a large part in the game, and more often than not, you're going to be using a terrain manipulator to gather these from various resource deposits on the planet's surface. But one mistake players make is making the terrain manipulator size the biggest it can be in order to speed up the time it takes to gather those resources. Now whilst of course that takes less time, it really is the only benefit here, because did you know when you make the terrain manipulator larger, you'll be gathering a lot less resources. I'm not sure why this works, but it does. So what you want to do instead is actually make the terrain manipulator the smallest it can be, and you'll be gathering plenty more resources. I mean, sure, it'll take longer, but the resource is what we care about, right? And still sticking with resources, this mistake will cost you time, which makes up for spending more time gathering them in the previous step, I guess. So, did you know that there is a catalogue in the game which shows everything you've ever discovered? Well, if you didn't, you do now, but the best part about this feature is you can instantly set a waypoint to a specific resource that you're looking for, even if it's in a different system. So, by using this feature, it saves you warping between systems and scanning every planet to see if there is a chance of that specific resource on the surface. I've saved so much time using this technique, and did you know there is a hidden secret around this feature as well? You can guarantee finding a lush or a paradise planet when locating certain resources. Do check out my recent Paradise Planet video in the description for the full details on that. Right, so there are many galaxies in No Man's Sky, and often people want to explore all of them, especially if you want to get to Eastern Time, which is a 10th galaxy, and also the one which is totally stacked full of lush and paradise planets. But one mistake players make just before warping into that new galaxy is not changing into a bog standard ship and not switching out your primary multi-tool for one you don't use at all. If you don't do this, you'll find that when you have gone through the next galaxy, all of your technology on your Starship and your multi-tool will be broken, so just switch to the ones you don't mind breaking before you go into the new galaxy. It literally takes a minute, right? And here is yet another mistake you could be making that will cost you time. So early on in the story you'll figure out how to refine resources, and that's great, but sometimes it can take a long ass time to refine them and you'll be standing around like a lemon waiting for it to complete. So it's pretty simple really. All you need to do is purchase a blueprint for your very own personal refiner so you can do all of this refining whilst on the move. It's that simple really. Who doesn't love a tip to save time in the game while still getting the same outcome? Right, there are a bunch of points of interest on the vast majority of planets. Now, I'm talking about things like trade terminals, portals, resource deposits, and exosuit drop pods. Now, coming across some of these can take a lot of time. Like, I don't think I've ever found a drop pod without placing a waypoint directly to it. And resource deposits are rare but incredibly valuable if you do find them, so how do you find these and other points of interest almost instantly? Well, all you need to do is have an exocraft and install a couple of upgrades for that, so you can scan for all sorts of things. The upgrades you want to install are the E-Signal Booster, the E-Signal Booster Tau, and the Advanced Signal Booster. And a bonus one if you have the Nautilon Submarine to install the high-powered sonar to search underwater for things like crashed ships, crashed freighters, and sunken buildings. Then you won't ever have to wonder where that nearest rare resource deposit is or that nearest exosuit expansion drop pod is. You can find them instantly from your utilities menu. And those, folks, are a bunch of mistakes that you could be making in No Man's Sky and how you can avoid them. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can also now become a channel member as well, where I'll be posting coordinates to a whole bunch of super rare and unique items and places to visit. You'll also get some unique emojis and badges when leaving comments, so what's not to love, right? And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.